realize I'm putting on a sweatshirt here too, and as soon as any sort of removing or adding, especially adding any article of clothing, and Henry sees that and he thinks, oh my goodness, it must be time to go and play in the park. None of this sitting around and following your breath. But dogs do it intuitively, right? Like there, we've got Perry. Dogs, hey Perry. Oh, he probably hasn't heard that. Dogs do it intuitively, right? Like I don't have other animals in my vicinity all that often, so I can't speak to them in the same way, but I watch the dogs, and their breathing practice, their movement practice, they do all of it. So, okay, let's just get settled. So there was a whole setup in terms of this as one of the 5 aggregates and today's sit, but here's the thing, we can kind of let all of that go, and then if and you can definitely turn your cameras off. Got some more joiners. There's Adriana. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to take you on a tour of experience. How would that be? Which is to say that we'll hit some of the stops along the way that we've been sitting with in a longer sense over the last few weeks. And then we'll drop into, and that'll be the first part. So we'll move into the body, we'll move into or form. We'll briefly touch on our feelings, okay? And feelings that are not so much emotions as our sense of just the general satisfaction or dissatisfaction with whatever's going on. This feels pleasant, this doesn't feel like anything at all. From there, we can actually tap into our perception of things, and that very much is about not only bodily sensations, but also emotions, okay, and how those present. And then thoughts. And so then really we've sort of covered, all of the input, all of the data, and I don't know why I'm talking about it in a scientific way, all of the gloriousness, all of the the heartbreak, all of it of being alive, right? And the final component that we haven't sat with is to sit with awareness itself. And that can seem quite abstract or, super strange. Like to say, what does it mean to, I'm going to sit with consciousness? And so that's all I'm going to say about it at the outset, other than to say, it's enough to just sit back in your experience, drop resistance, okay? Drop the questions, drop concerns about whether you're doing it right or wrong, drop fighting to control your attention, and instead to just be super open, super curious. And I'll cue a little bit more than that, obviously. But we're really, I'll give you a few different ways that I've thought about it, or that other teachers sometimes describe how to approach this practice. But ultimately, as with any type of sit, even if someone's watching, it's your sit, okay? So really make it your own. And let's do that by beginning with our arrival. And I'm gonna, if you are peeking at me, you'll notice me using my glasses every so often, just so I have a sense of the time. Okay, very good. So let's begin. I'll leave it to you to decide today whether eyes are open or are closed. I leave that to you every day, really. I mean, there can be good reasons to close the eyes, and for some of us, at least some of the time, it's a way of accessing what's happening inside more directly, to be a little bit less distracted by our visual field. And it even can help to kind of take us out of the scanning, the monitoring of sound or of any other sort of sensation. So if that works for you, awesome. And if, like me, you want to leave your eyes open, because I'm going to take in the full catastrophe today. every cotton picking thing, okay? Just really just open. That's cool too. There is no right or wrong. And so let's begin small. So I'm going to begin just by sensing my own body at a particular point. And I like to go to my sternum. It feels like kind of the center of emotion, the heart center, the actual center of our bodies. And if that's a spot that works for you, awesome. Just noticing the breath. Noticing the rise and fall as it passes through, as it moves down below the sternum. Exhaling, dropping. Feeling the rise as you fill up from the belly and into the lungs. And from that sort of focal point, let's think about, with each breath, we're going to inhale a little bit more deeply into our body, expanding that focal point from right at our center to a little bit bigger. And we can expand that consciousness, or that, poor choice of words there, our awareness of those sensations of our body on the exhales as well. But you can move slowly without being methodical. Just really body-based. Feeling that you're alive. Feeling that you are a going concern, that your body is taking up physical space. That it is constantly moving, no matter how still we might feel we've become. As we continue to expand that awareness out into the limbs, past both shoulder girdles, past both hip girdles, down into the legs and feet, down into the arms and hands, up and past the shoulders into the neck, the head, the hair, if there's hair there. In fact, feeling our whole bodies now. Everything contained within the skin. And we don't ultimately have control of this, and like I said at the outset, it's a bit antithetical to what we're about to try to assert control, but if you notice that there's tension, and maybe just a gentle scan, again, not methodically, we've done body scans, but this is more like breathing with your whole body. Breathing in relaxation, little sigh out and exhaling tension. Tension can absolutely be our ally, it can be our friend, it can make us strong, it can mobilize us. And maybe the tension wants to stay here. So maybe that's the entry point for the meditation. Recognizing that it's here, recognizing that you've been breathing, and not attempting so much as just allowing it to let go of itself. And maybe that doesn't happen. And that's okay too. It's not going to be tense forever. we're just paying our body both attention and love, in a sense. Showing ourselves care and affection can be the hardest thing much of the time. Far easier to extend that kindness out to other humans or other canines. And let's, before we move past our physical body, not past I should say, but through, because we're going to stay with those sensations. Let's just notice, it may sound a little bit contrary to where we normally go, but what do you taste right now? Maybe nothing. Maybe something residual. What do you smell? Notice that you can smell. Not to assume, again, we've had many people difficulties with smell and taste over the last couple of years. But if you can, maybe just sipping the air, tasting the experience. Noticing sound. Could be the sounds internal to your own body, the sound of a heartbeat, the pulse. I've got someone singing a cappella upstairs. I don't know if that's coming through on the recording. I can hear a voice lifted in song. I can hear the sound of a dog sighing. The thrum of a fan. And then, and eyes don't have to change at all here. Notice your visual field. If your eyes are closed, notice that there is still shapes, or are still shapes, I should say. There is light and shading. And again, with all of these aspects of our experience, we're not enumerating them. We're not, at least today, even labeling them. We're just noticing them. Finally, notice where your body meets the air. And particularly if your eyes are closed, notice that you may only have a vague sense of where your body physically is in space. There's an aspect of sort of fuzziness, of just this kind of ball of sensation. And different things coming to the fore at different moments, and sometimes staying, sometimes not. Sometimes breaking up and receding altogether. And take in the room. Take in the physical space around you. If your eyes are open, you might actually notice negative space. Not negative meaning bad, negative meaning seemingly empty. An expanse, an openness between a sense of where you are, where you feel yourself to be, and everything else in the world that's appearing right now. And it's still appearing even if the eyes are closed. You might even perceive it literally through feeling. And release tension. Notice if you're holding on. Notice if you're feeling that things need to be a particular way. So if you're feeling relaxation, you've got that sort of, that's nice. Well, bully for you, that is nice, that's awesome. And I certainly don't want to disabuse you of that. I don't want to ask you to relinquish that. But let's not hang on to it. Let's not have anything at stake about that. Because that pleasantness, it is time-bound. It is limited. All good things, right? And the flip side of that is unpleasant feelings. The sensation that builds tension, or that in any case builds something that you're not totally digging, also totally temporary. And maybe just noticing that there's no real feeling tone at all, that you're just kind of chilling out, just hanging, in neutral. Cool. That's awesome. And it's awesome if you're not. Alright. And release tension. Accepting that you're here right now. How miraculous is that? Every little moment of your day, every aspect, in a sense, of your life up to this moment, leading you to right now, so that you can dwell in the right now. Also just noticing the emotional body. Notice any feelings of feelings. And notice that unless and until we apply a label, this is sadness, this is fear, this is puzzlement, or whatever it is, that really this is merely a cascade of sensations. Residing in our body, being expressed through our awareness when we pay attention, or when our attention is grabbed by a particular emotion that may be felt strongly. And that too is happening, it's appearing. If you were to really look for the moment that the emotion shows itself, where was it a moment before that? And if it sort of breaks up and dissolves or is replaced by another emotion or another bit of perception of any sort, where did it go? There's no real control there. You didn't do it, you didn't ask for it. And yet here it is. And right? Okay. Finally, notice your thoughts. As we reach the halfway point of our sit, much of what I just said for guiding me through sort of the emotional terrain also holds for thoughts. The thoughts arise, but where's the thinker? Now, let's not get into thinking about the thinker. Just notice that those thoughts, they pop in there and then will drop away. Sometimes we can have thoughts stop altogether. And other times it's in a way, a snowstorm of thoughts, sort of chaos blowing through quickly, one on top of the other. And yet we don't conjure them. You're not a magician. They're just all here. And that's what every part of this tour thus far has in common. All of the points in the landscape, everything, whether they came up or not, all of the sort of points of note as we were moving through there, your body, your breath, your environment, all of the appearance of sensations, your feelings about what's going on, emotions, thoughts, all of it put together. They're all simply appearances. And where are they appearing? They're appearing in consciousness. And consciousness is something that, again, I want to get into the weeds here, and we don't want to puzzle it out. It's more like just letting this kind of wash over, not fighting it, not trying to do anything with it. So we could debate, when we're asleep or we had a seizure or anesthesia or intoxication. There are many ways that our consciousness can be altered, that it can be augmented. And yet through all of that, consciousness is. And if consciousness feels too big to consider, just think of it as awareness. Notice that it precedes any of the other stops on our little journey here. Those things cannot exist for us except as objects within consciousness. And there's a potential for real relief here, because all of those things, as wonderful or as terrible or somewhere in between, as they can all be at various times, they are appearances, which means fundamentally they're not consciousness. They're appearing within consciousness. See, there's a little gap there, a little space. So all of those things, and I'm not going to mention any of them actually from here on out specifically, you'll notice them, right? As they appear or as they don't. But you can just drop back into that larger awareness. An awareness that may seem less self-oriented or less self-motivated. So how can we sense that? Just notice the feeling of a self, of you. Where is that? How do you know that? Arguably, there is awareness, and then there's you being aware of things that would seem to give you the sense that, oh yeah, there's a body here, there's feelings, there's thoughts, there's perceptions. But behind that curtain of experience is something bigger, something that can be tricky to see, and yet it's always there. There's arguably a great liberation here. I'm paraphrasing, I'm borrowing the words of another teacher that I really respect. It's what's left when there's no problem to solve. Notice what is happening right now without having to change anything. You can even kind of look for yourself. Where do you perceive yourself to be? Why do you perceive yourself to be? And again, if at any point any of these cues take you into a place that feels a little wonky or unstable or just not super, you're not digging it, you're not comfortable, come back to the breath. Come back to any point of focus that feels a bit more restful. In some sense, this can be kind of the logical, I don't know about end point, but a place to be in that non-identified awareness. Like actually being aware that you are aware. So if it feels like, and this might work, I'm just throwing out different ideas. So if one lands, hold on to it. And if one doesn't, that's okay. Just don't hold on too tight. So it might be the feeling of reaching out, not physically reaching out with your hand, but just sensing, scanning. Right? What is reaching out? What's beyond that? If it feels like any aspect of your experience is grasping, is reaching for what's next, or what's appearing, just turn that attention back in on itself. What's noticing? Can feel like a lot of things. For me, dropping back to this place can feel like I just feel a deep sense of well-being, of okayness or equanimity, if you will. like, oh, right, it's going to be okay. This is the sense of meditation as a more expansive, even a spiritual practice. That we are just teeny little parts of a much, much bigger picture. So we don't need to take things so personally. We can pause and just be in what is. And if you become kind of grippy or focused on any particular object that's appearing in your experience, just turn your gaze back around. And just be. This way of not just perceiving, but of literally of being, can feel or sound a little trippy. Fair enough. But look for yourself. Look for your head. And even if your eyes are open, unless you're looking into a reflective surface, there's no head to see. There's just an openness. There's just this space where everything else appears. Obviously, you're there as a person. I'm here as a person. But really, we're only there for one another. Unless we can see ourselves reflected in a mirror or reflected in others. We're simply that open space. But more than that, we are everything. We contain everything. It's all there. Where else could it be? And I think it's fair to feel a lot of things there. I feel wonder. I feel humility. I feel connection. And maybe you do too. And maybe you don't. And that's okay. But that's the practice. Kind of peering into, in this fifth aggregate, this much bigger picture. So you can just marinate in that for a moment more. So while I've been guiding us through as we move into the last moment or so of our sit together. I've been guiding, right? Yes. Kind of pointing to different aspects of experience that you may or may not be picking up or playing with. But it's been meant to be very passive, very open and undefined as opposed to prescriptive. And I'm about to change that. Let's end with a bit of kindness. People get, some people love the word, some people don't. Love, loving kindness, connection, wonder. I mean, all of these things we could say. All of these things that we could feel from the perspective of consciousness. All of these things that we can be or reside in. So really embracing all of that with gratitude. This last just about half an hour that we've sat, it too has changed. It's not where we are now. It's gone. See, nothing's permanent. And yet, we get to experience it. And that's a gift. So just hold that. Hold that in your awareness. And thank yourself for making the time for yourself and for one another. Showing up and being aware. And if your eyes are closed, maybe opening them up now. Maybe moving your body in whatever way seems right. And we'll let it go. And that's a wrap. And there you are, my friends. So there's the grand tour. And today's guidance was actually a form of sit that would be kind of not my go-to practice certainly, but that's the larger context for sure of where and why I'm sitting. So I hope it resonated. I hope it was interesting or informative or relaxing or something. And if it wasn't, that's okay. Come here, bud. Wanna come? Come on. Hey! Awesome. That's good news. Meditative is good. Good stuff. I figure I must be in the right mindset when this guy, who's normally a total ball of energy, comes in all chilled out. Right, buddy? Great. Well, meditative, I'll take it. That's meditative for the win. So I should say I have posted the movement practice from last week, and which was for hips and low back. I shot that yesterday, and we'll have part 2 of that next week. So we're gonna have a second round of just getting into that whole area and letting it be and let the tension go. And then we'll have one final meditative sit 2 weeks from today. And definitely as we get into holiday season, and simply because we've been on this tour of the aggregates, we're going to sit with kindness and care. So some form of loving kindness meditation to come. I'm going to stop the other camera, but if there's anyone that has any questions, any comments, I'm going to wave goodbye for now to the recording, those of you that are watching after. Bye-bye.